Good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Serge. Today, let's talk about an article that just came out. Actually, I read this article in the news, which we can see on the screen. Diet rich in animal products, processed food, alcohol, and sugar link with inflammatory gut microbiome. So I was really curious to read it because as you go over the article, you realize that the authors seem to suggest that meat is pro-inflammatory, can cause inflammation, and of course they link it with cancer and heart disease. I mean, this question of if meat is an issue or not has been going on for decades. And this is the latest article of Science on this topic. And then when you start looking at the actual publication, which is this one, the title is Long-Term Dietary Patterns are associated with pro-inflammatory and anti-inflammatory features of the gut microbiome. So what they did is they look at the diet of people. We can see here it's 125 people. So what they did is they basically sent a questionnaire to them. This is how it works in science, in nutritional science, is you send out a questionnaire to people and they write down what they ate for the day. And then they send it back to the doctors, and then they look at the food, the diet. So they assume that the questionnaire is a representation of what they eat on a daily basis. But we know that those questionnaires are really biased. They know that when people do that, they tend to lie on the questionnaire. They tend to eat better, first of all, and they tend to lie about the intake of sodas, the intake of junk food, and they tend to lie about the intake of vegetables and fruits. So typically they found that when people fill out those questionnaires, they write down that they eat more fruits and vegetables than what they actually do, and they eat less junk food, red meat, sodas, and so on. So these questionnaires are really, really biased. And they are not really good science at all. You cannot deduct and conclude anything from those questionnaires. But this is what this study about. When I see a study based on questionnaires, to me it's a big red flag. It doesn't mean anything. It can maybe help us to come up with a hypothesis, but it cannot conclude anything. But after saying all that, let's look into the science of this paper. So like I said, they look at the questionnaires, and then they group and they look at the microbiome of those people, okay? What kind of bacteria they have? Do they have the good type, the pro-inflammatory bacteria, or the anti-inflammatory microbiome? And then they look at the population of these two different types of bacteria and the foods that they eat. So what they do is they cluster the foods together that may indicate pro-inflammation or anti-inflammation. So in the category of meat, so they cluster different foods, and they cluster potatoes, French fries, milk, sodas, snacks, pizzas, and sugar. So they cluster all those different foods into the meat category. And then on the other side, they cluster vegetables, they cluster grain, they cluster white meat, fish, all together. And they found that if you eat the first cluster, the first category that contained meat, you tend to have more pro-inflammatory bacteria in the gut. And they concluded that could be meat causing the problem. But here's the question. They didn't really look at the other components. They didn't look at, it could be the sodas that those people were eating, drinking. Or it could be the snacks. What is snacks? We don't really know. When people snacks, typically they snack on candy, on chocolate, on greasy food maybe, on, you know what I mean? So they snacks on junk food. Most people snack on that kind of food. What about milk? Milk is a problem because it is clustering with meat. So they believe, I mean, the author has a bias that meat is an issue, and we can read it actually through the article. So they wanted to prove that meat was a problem. But what about all these other foods that are in the same category that meat? I mean, people who eat meat typically are seen as people are not as healthy. They tend to be to be smokers, to be heavier, to drink more sodas, to consume more sugar, and so on. And people who eat fish, chicken, and more fruits or vegetables tend to be in the category of healthier. Okay, meaning they're more mindful about their health. They don't smoke, they don't drink alcohol, they exercise more, and so on and so on. So why are we concluding that meat is the issue when there's so many other factors that they didn't look at? They didn't look at the number of people who are smoking, for example, or how much are they drinking. You know, all those different things that can impact the inflammation and the gut in the body. I mean, today we know that there's dozens and dozens and dozens of articles and research papers showing that meat is not really necessarily a problem. And that's another point that the authors didn't look at. They didn't look at the quality of the meat. We know if you consume conventional meats, you may have problems. I totally agree with that. Those animals are sick. I mean, if you look the movie What the Health, you will see that they are not treated well at all. I mean, they are injected with all kinds of hormones. They are fed antibiotics. They are isolated in really closed areas. They don't see the light. They are not being fed with hay and grass. So those animals are sick. So if you eat conventional meat, of course, you're most likely gonna get sick. That's a no-brainer. It makes sense. But they never talk about the quality of the meat. So when you start looking at the quality of the meat, is it grass-fed, organic, antibiotic-free, pesticide-free, vaccine-free, and so on and so on. So that type of meat is actually really, really healthy. And there's a lot of research on the quality of those meats. And beef it is a superfood to me. It has a lot of good nutrition in it that your body requires. So if you do go with meat, make sure it's healthy, it's grass-fed, organic, pasture-fed, pasture-raised, and so on and so on. So this is another point that they don't talk about. Even though we don't look at these two different types of meat in general has been part of our diet for thousands of years. So it doesn't make sense that now, for the last 20 years, it's becoming an issue. It's causing cancer, it's causing heart disease, and so on and so on. What about all the other food that we've been adding to our diet for the last 40, 50 years? Trans fat, vegetable oils, corn products, and all the sugary sweets, sodas, and so on and so on. Okay. As a matter of fact, as you read this article, you will see that the author concludes that an imbalance in omega-6 and omega-3 is actually causing the inflammation in the body. So omega-6 comes from vegetable oils, like we talked about, corn, soybean, cottonseed, comes from trans fat. So we know that those oils are pro-inflammatory. It's a no-brainer. And if you eat conventional meat, we know that kind of meat has 20, 25 times more omega-6 than omega-3. So if you consume that type of meat, you're actually consuming meat that can cause inflammation. It goes back again to the type of meat. So a good ratio of omega-6, omega-3 should be in the 2, 3, or 4 omega-6 over 1 of omega-3. Good sources of omega-6 is nuts are really good, and omega-3 we talk about fish, seafood, and so on. So if you eat grass-fed beef, grass-fed meat, you have the right ratio of omega-6 and omega-3, which actually is known to fight inflammation. Okay, so this study is another junk science to me. It doesn't support anything. At the end of the day, when you read the conclusion of the authors, they themselves say that this study doesn't prove a causative factor between meat and pro-inflammation. They have no idea. They just make association, but the association is so weak that it doesn't support the title that we can see here. So don't be concerned, don't be worried. Have your steak, have your bacon, your eggs. It's still okay to eat. Just make sure you get the best source of these animal products. So if you have any questions, please let me know. Again, thank you for watching and God bless you.